government, freedom, law, education, health, free energy, money, debt. Awake Radio, deconstructing the dream world, one lie at a time.
You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you?
You know, for a second there, yeah, I kinda did.
Welcome to Transition Mission on Awake Radio and simulcasting on Shaziz Radio globally. I'm here with my partner,
Lisa.
And I'm Al. And this week we interview Mark D'Arcy and Caroline Lubbe-D'Arcy, a determined husband and wife activist team who are effecting positive change in the province of New Brunswick, Canada. Please join us for a very authentic, energizing, and solution-based broadcast where we discuss topics such as the Anti-shale Movement, the controlled Irving Monopoly, government and media corruption, the reaction to the Neil Young Anti-Tar Sands Tour, and many other community-based solutions.
As usual, you'll be able to find information and links regarding this broadcast on Transition Times Facebook page. You'll also find previous broadcasts now posted on Awake Radio as well as on shazizradio.com, host Lisa Terrio. And we are updating our transitiontimescanada.blogspot.ca, which includes further details. Thanks for listening. Massey Joe.
offered life in sacrifice so that others could go
This week we're here with Mark and Caroline. Hey Mark, how are you guys doing?
Very good.
Great to have you on. We've been planning this one for some time now, haven't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the vacation came in in between that. And how was your vacation, by the way?
We basically just got away and took away our email, access to telephone, and really just unwound.
So you feel recharged now?
Yes. Yeah, it was a great time. We went to Costa Rica and felt like jungle children for 2 weeks. So it was great.
No, good, wonderful. So give the audience a bit of a background about what you two are all about and what the projects. I know you've been working on a lot of things. So.
We live in downtown Fredericton, and with our daughter, we bought a house in 1997 in the area of Fredericton that was just up and coming, and we really got along well with the neighbors and formed a community group, and very much to promote the beautification, neighborhood identity. We actually came up with a name for the community, the West Platte, and at the same time, we started to be hit broadside with all these developers who had been used to our neighborhood as a dumping ground for adverse development. And very much we became activist organization, having to input a lot of our concerns to city council. So that really, we sort of cut our teeth on community organization within the neighborhood. Since then, it's broadened to more provincial issues like wetland preservation, the protection of natural spaces, and currently with shale gas here in the province of New Brunswick.
So you've been kept busy.
Yes, it's been, well, like you said, like Mark said, since 1997, it just seems to be one thing after another. Not too many breaks, but that's what happens, you know, when you start getting involved and, you know, start paying attention and I guess wanting to speak out. It's very difficult to be quiet when you see things that are not right, you know, because you probably get more comfortable with, you know, speaking up for what you believe in, and then it's very difficult to just take a step back and ignore it or not care, you know. So it is one of those things that I think once you've become an activist, it's very difficult not to be one, not because you're unhappy all the time, but it's just, you know, when you see things that are wrong that you think can change, you just really need to get in there and try to see what you can do, you know, to make change happen.
Yeah.
And what's empowering is that you're not alone. You find that oftentimes people get withdrawn and get fearful and have anxiety about all of these issues that are so overwhelming. But when you actually get into the community and reach out and organize, you find there are a lot of other like-minded people like yourself that you start meeting for the first time. They're concerned about their child's future. They're concerned about their community. And it's really nice and empowering to start networking and become friends with that layer of citizens in your community. That's one of the things that keeps us going. We're very energized, and there's a very positive collaboration between a lot of our friends and fellow activists.
And Mark, at many times they become your new family.
Yes, definitely. You know, because it's, you know, you're on the same wavelength. So,
Yes.
You know, you have a lot in common. And, yeah, we have a lot of fun together, actually. So.
You know, so much of the messaging now from industry and ideological governments is that you're alone. You know, you're just a vocal minority, and you're misinformed, you're emotional. And once you start networking and you realize that all of that is false, and I think that collaborating together with the actual community, not some made-up picture that the government and industry are trying to paint, but what the reality is something that brings us optimism.
And you find that we all want the same things, too. And we're all just as concerned.
Yes, definitely. And I find what I notice with some friends that I have that definitely support what I do, but just they're fearful. They're just not confident enough to do more. But, you know, I just sometimes wish that they could just try a little bit and see for themselves that it actually, you know, it makes you happy because you feel, you know, that you're actually doing something about something that you're concerned about, and it actually feels worse if you don't do anything. You know, but I think you don't know that until you start doing something, and then you can feel the difference. And we certainly didn't get involved because we needed to feel happier. We got involved because we weren't happy about something that was happening. But then the side benefit of it is that, you know, that you actually, like Mark said, you know, you make really good friends and you feel empowered, and it's actually a very positive feeling that you get, you know, from doing this. So
and it builds community.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that's the way. That's probably the best thing that we can do right now is get strong communities together, because that's where our voices get heard. One person, if we hear all the time, oh, you can't fight City Hall.
Yes.
One person can fight City Hall, but if everybody in the city is fighting City Hall is going to have to do something about it.
Yeah.
City Hall and even the province are no match for engaged citizens. that are there for the long haul. So often people will go away after, for example, City Council approves adverse development, and they'll say, well, that's it. They've had third reading and approval of a project. How could I possibly change the outcome? I think a lot of people in power are not expecting the community to stay engaged and upset and ask for that decision to be reversed. And that's exactly what we've done here in our community. We've refused to say we can't do that. We've refused to accept adverse development. For example, we're in an old stock, grid pattern residential community that was laid out by the British around 1790, I believe. And there are not that many residential grid pattern plats in North America. And it's very unique. And yet some of the developers were actually tearing down these heritage homes and consolidating lots to build essentially junk apartment buildings. And how could you possibly stop that when there's a powerful development community in the city like elsewhere? Well, we did exactly that. And we can walk through our neighborhoods now in the downtown, and because of community mobilization, we have 20 residential blocks, 20 that have been downsized and protected from this type of adverse development. And we went on to, after that municipal plan win, we went on to become the first community with traffic calming in the city of Fredericton.
What does
we
that
went
mean?
on to protect buildings from demolition, like the Hard Shoe Factory, which is now an apartment building, and also the York Street train station, which the owner was trying to demolish through neglect. And, a lot of these issues, it took several years of being vigilant, of engaging the community, informing them through public meetings, presentations to city council, city committees. But we were very persuasive, and we didn't give up. And I think once you build on a few successes, you begin to get the confidence in others that, you can make a difference.
Exactly. And it's such short-sightedness, too, from these to go in and to do something. Well, that would just destroy St. John's. It's like a historic town here in Canada, and that would be a tourist attraction also, I would think. It would bring in business. They were just so that...
Well, and exactly. And what went along with the train station was the rail corridor. And they were essentially going to eliminate any transportation use for the rail corridor. Once the tracks were taken up, like has happened in other communities, normally it gets replaced with a trail. And that was written into our municipal plan, complete with maps as to what would happen when the trail component was no more. And instead of that right-of-way, together with the train station being preserved, the city council started to hand it over to developers to develop with townhouses. And when we found out about it, the city told us point blank, the ship has sailed. We've made our decision, and you will not get those 8 blocks of trails system through your connecting neighborhoods in the downtown. Well, to make a long story short, we have 7 of those 8 blocks dedicated with trails now. And even after we were told the ship has sailed, even after we were told that council had approved the development of one block and was moving in to sell, to have the other block developed. After that approval by City Council was not expecting us to ramp up our opposition. They expected us to go away. And we ramped up our opposition, and we reversed their decision. And so, I mean, we're very proud of the fact that we have preserved alternative transportation corridors for the residents, not just a very car-centric downtown, which so many cities and towns fall victim to.
And it shows you that speaking up and not giving up is it works.
Yeah, it does. You just, it's whoever lasts the longest wins, I guess.
Yeah, that's part of it too. But I mean, these city councils, who do they think they're working for?
Mm-hmm.
That's the frustrating part, is that it's this mindset that people are working. They're not working for the people of the community. They're working for the people with the money, the developers, or the.
Yeah, they probably get approached a lot, I would think. I don't know how it works, but I'm assuming that it's the lobby power, too, that even on a municipal level, that tends to get things done, And citizens oftentimes don't hear early enough in a planning stage about something that's in the works. So oftentimes you do find out late in the planning stages what's actually about to happen. And that's why, it's pretty unfair for a city then to tell you that the ship has sailed when it's really not your fault. You were not notified of these things that were being planned behind closed doors, and then suddenly it's out there, and then you've got 2 weeks to scramble and get your act together,
Yeah, exactly.
So that tends to be what happens.
So you really have to be diligent.
Mm. Yeah, like more, we're asking now for transparency, that we are made aware in our neighborhood right away. As soon as something is starting to be talked about, we want to know about it. We don't want to know about it, 3 weeks before a city council meeting. That's just not, it doesn't give people enough time to even think about what's coming down the pipe. And that's been oftentimes an issue, and I'm sure that's an issue in every city,
Exactly.
And the latest strategy with politicians is not to even engage the citizens anymore. More and more, we are shut out of giving presentations to our city council. And there are backroom deals, backroom meetings going on. They do not want these conversations to emerge in front of city council where there's accountability and transparency. So what's happened here in the city of Fredericton, and I'm not making an accusation, I'm just stating fact, that you can give all the presentations in the world from your community on concerns like shale gas and its impacts to the watershed and the airshed of our urban residents. You can give all the presentations you want to the safety and environment committees that the city council has set up in the city, and they will refuse passing on recommendations to city council that you be allowed to speak and voice your concerns. So they're using the committee system to block citizen engagement at the council level. Yet, behind the scenes, the city employees and some of the politicians are meeting with the shale gas companies. And that has to stop. What Caroline and I did is, after 2 presentations, one of which we implored them to allow us to take that issue to city council because there were fracking vehicles sighted in the area. We didn't know what type of testing and or drilling was imminent in the area. There was no information being given to the residents, and we implored the Public Safety and Environment Committee to allow us to speak to council. They refused. And so at the next city council meeting, Caroline and I got up to the microphone and demanded to ask City Council for the chance at the next meeting to give a presentation, at which time the mayor, Mayor Brad Woodside, turned off her microphone and then proceeded to give us a lecture on why we were out of order. And to make a long story short, 6 months later, we were back in council, having given another presentation to the Public Safety and Environment Committee. And because we were in a municipal election campaign, we basically pressured City Council to give us that opportunity to speak. And again, we talked about the longevity, the drive that residents and communities need to do nowadays to really challenge the bullies in the political arena. And they are bullies. There is no other definition for politicians who block citizens' ability to make presentations, especially on matters of public safety, water quality, air quality, and health of its residents to City Council. And so I'm being quite forceful right now, but essentially we have to stand up for our rights. And if politicians are not concerned with the public safety of their residents, why are they in politics in the first place?
Exactly. Like, who votes them in? Who is going to vote them in again when they act this way?
I know.
It's like so short-sighted. And never mind that. This whole situation in New Brunswick, the whole world is watching with the fracking. They don't see that?
Yeah, I know. It's pretty tough to understand, the mindset. But it's obviously, corporate power has, penetrated our government, and it just makes it's almost like they're blinded. They've got the blinders on, and they just keep thinking they'll just keep plowing forward. And I wonder sometimes if they're not even concerned with getting elected again. They probably have things set up for themselves.
Yeah, I think you're
Caroline,
right.
an agenda.
Well, as an example, the last three governors for the state of Pennsylvania, which is a huge shale gas fracking state, the last three governors, when they left office, are now with positions with the gas companies.
Oh, that's interesting. That's good
and
information.
This
Yeah.
sort of legislated corruption, this legal corruption turnstile is probably a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense otherwise. Why, who benefits from politicians completely shutting out the public from decisions, excluding them the information that they should have access to? There's no other explanation.
Yeah. Yeah, we know who's benefiting, the oil and gas companies, and it trickles down from the top. We go to the top. Well, who is Harper working for?
Uncle Irving.
Yeah, exactly. Because really, there are enough studies out there that show that they should be concerned, and then just to act so with, basically flippantly towards the research and everything, it's just really hard to understand. So, the only thing you can really explain it with is that there's corruption, that there has to be.
Yeah, because I have never seen a report that said that this was safe, that it was needed, that it was going to be economically beneficial. All you hear is the few odd jobs that maybe somebody could have.
The fact that they were refusing to look at other ways to give the economy a boost, and other countries have done that. Look at Germany, and where they are doing things very differently now with trying to go towards a green economy and so on. And there's again enough research out there to show that job creation, is much more. You get way more jobs, with a green economy than you do with this particular type of extraction industry. That's very expensive and makes the company a lot of money, but really, not a lot of jobs. Not like the way they're making it sound, So and again, you get this whole thing with governments just wanting to put all their eggs in one basket. We're constantly jumping from it's one solution instead of understanding that usually economies work better if you have a whole bunch of different things happening rather than just one, thing that, like shale gas, right? It's this one industry that our government is telling us will save us, and it's just ridiculous, And anyway, it's just so frustrating that they're not willing to see that we need to move in a different direction. Not just economically, but environmentally, right?
And to so blatantly lie to the citizens of a province or state or country on the perceived benefits of shale gas. It doesn't take much information from currently available data, much of it generated by government and peer-reviewed science, to say that there is an unimaginable amount of water, toxic chemicals, and industrialization of the land involved with shale gas. Anyone looking at it with an objective point of view is going to realize very quickly that right now the technology is so young, it can't be done safely. Maybe in 20 years, maybe in 40 years, but probably by that time we'll have to keep the carbon in the ground anyway, so it won't matter. But right now, the information is it cannot be done safely. And for the politicians here in New Brunswick, we have an energy minister and we have the premier that will keep saying over and over again that there's no evidence of water contamination and fracking. And they may be parsing their words carefully, like the lawyers have prompted industry to be on message. But these are the same people. Our premier, when he was in opposition, spoke about all the water contamination issues in the United States.
Yeah.
When he was in opposition back in 2010. And so how could, when he becomes premier, completely discount the fact that there is water contamination with shale gas industry? They're incorrigible, that they've been corrupted by whatever means the industry has at its disposal. But they are lying to the citizens, and they refuse to have public meetings. They refuse to have public debates, and they hope that with the corporate media, this lie will go unchallenged.
Well, it's definitely.
So what we've done here in the province is very much a grassroots movement. We have never seen in the province of New Brunswick a grassroots movement this large and widespread. It's basically spilled over into and joined with the I Don't Know More movement, with a lot of the outstanding treaty relationships and land claims here in the province with First Nations. It's really an unprecedented coalition of French-speaking communities, English-speaking communities, and the First Nations here in New Brunswick. It's been a wonderful experience, but we are up against corrupt politicians.
And then on top of that, we have, of course, one family that owns most of the media in this province, and this family is Irving, and they are an oil and gas company. And so, on top of a government that's not helping us, we also have, a very difficult situation with media because it's hard to get your story out there because the media, they just slant their stories in favor of, as much as they can, in favor of oil and gas, with Irving's being the owners. And so that's been interesting, too, because, of course, there's been such an uproar that they've had no choice but to cover things. But, the coverage, if we had an independent media, like not one that's connected to a corporation, I think things would have been much better for us, because we would have been able to get our story out there the way it should be told.
Yeah, I think there's so many people now that do not trust the mainstream media anymore that we're going to be seeing a lot of changes there. They're going to have to either go this way or else they're going to go the way of the dodo bird, because people are waking up very fast. This Neil
Young thing.
The Neil Young.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Oh, they had no choice.
A classic example of an individual who is concerned, like Carolyn and I, with the future of their children and grandchildren. And for this individual, he just happens to be a rock star. He just happens to be probably one of the most famous, beloved musicians that Canada has ever known. And for the industry and the Alberta Premier, the Saskatchewan Premier, and the likes of Rex Murphy and other media people to pile on to this individual and in a well-coordinated campaign make an example out of him. This is what happens when concerned individuals speak up. And you know what? They picked on the wrong person.
Oh.
And I believe that there are a lot of people like Carolyn and I. There are a lot of I Don't Know More supporters. There are a lot of people like Neil Young that are stepping out and saying enough of these lies. And the tar sands, the oil and gas industry in general in Canada is responsible for only 1% of the workers in this country. For all the rhetoric to be leveled on citizens about how this is the cultural fabric, the economic powerhouse of this nation, it's not true. And for them to put all their eggs in one basket and tell us for the economic future of Canada, we don't diversify our economy. We actually focus all of our efforts on getting as much fossil fuels out of the ground as possible. And when Holland and other nations have realized that if you do that, the Dutch effect, you start gutting your manufacturing sector. No one talks about that. No one talks about all the past problems with export of your resources that are being extracted too quickly. And with climate change, it's the elephant in the room. And I believe that Neil Young speaking up has really lifted a veil over a lot of other people, and it's allowing them to get their voice, get willingness to speak up as well. With climate change, for example, you don't have to listen to people like us or environmental groups. You can listen to the World Bank, the International Energy Agency, and accounting firms like PricewaterhouseCoopers. And they have all agreed in recent reports in the last couple of years that we must leave the majority of fossil fuels in the ground, or else we commit our children and our grandchildren to the catastrophic effects of climate change. So this is fact. And for our politicians, being led by the likes of Stephen Harper and our own Premier, David Alward, here in New Brunswick, to say that we have to pump as much bitumen through export pipelines and sell it to the likes of China and India is acceptable. People like Neil Young and people like us are now coming out of the woodwork, and we're saying that is unacceptable. And for the sake of our children, we have to put a stop to this. And for them not to talk about the diversification of the economy, the fact that we are going to generate up to 7 times more jobs and prosperity if we go clean energy, if we go efficiency projects like retrofits for homes and new buildings, that's where all the jobs are. Massachusetts just came out with a 2012 report in September, and they looked at the clean energy jobs that have been created. 80,000 jobs were newly created in the clean energy sector. Compare that to the neighboring jurisdiction of Pennsylvania. They only created 40,000 jobs in natural gas. So the notion that you need to extract natural gas and oil to generate jobs is a myth. The fact that you need to gut your environmental rules and regulations to become a powerful economy is a myth. The biggest, most powerful economies in the world have some of the strictest environmental laws and policies. Look at Vermont, for example. They're going opposite the direction of jurisdictions like New Brunswick, and their unemployment rate is below the national average in the United States. Thank you very much. And here in New Brunswick, we've had one large corporate control of our resources after another, decade after decade after decade. Our unemployment rate is one of the highest in the country. So we have to start calling the politicians on their lies. One, you need to extract fossil fuels out of the ground as quickly as possible and export them. That's how you become rich. False. That you have to gut your environmental laws and policies to become successful. False. And Norway is a textbook example of how to manage the resources. They don't have extractive industries come in. They actually use them as consultants, and they keep all the money for their people. Germany, with feed-in tariffs, they have generated more than $100 billion of private investment. Citizens and farmers have invested $100 billion of their money, their community's money, to supercharge the wind and the solar and the biogas sectors in their communities. And you look at a map of Germany, more than half of the counties and municipalities now have 100% of their energy requirements provided by renewables. And they're so supercharged with their wind and solar and biogas electricity generation that they're actually making money. Some of these communities are up to 200, 300% energy production. And this is a lie that our politicians keep telling us, that the only way to economic salvation is through extraction of shale gas and bitumen from the tar sands. And we've got to call them out. And the way that they've piled on to Neil Young is extremely offensive. And as a parent, all the parents, all the grandparents, all the First Nations are rising up, many of them, and are starting to basically say, enough is enough. We're going to take back our land, take back our country, and hopefully, for the sake of our children, preserve the future climate.
I think the sad realization that, for me, maybe came in my 30s was that, I always thought that politicians, were sort of experts in the things they were talking about. And of course, that's completely untrue. And what's so disappointing is that they surround themselves, just not with good people to advise them. So, you think that if you are brought into office, premier, prime minister, that you would surround yourself with a good bunch of different kinds of experts to get a really good feel about an issue. But they don't seem to do that, so that's what's been so sad about our leadership, I think, that we just don't have good leaders with a vision of their own, and then they, are hanging around with obviously the wrong people and either, being told wrong stuff that they believe, or again, back to the corruption thing. But I think we just need, I feel I've lost so much respect really for the political system, and most people probably have, and that's why voter turnout isn't very good either, because, you just think they're just a bunch of lying, they tell you what you want to hear, and then they get in, and then they go hang out with whoever tells them what to do, and they don't do anything that helps the people, and that just has to change, Maybe part of the problem is, career politicians. Maybe politicians shouldn't be in politics as a career. It should be, you should become a politician because you care about your community, and and it shouldn't be a career where you're looking to move up, because then you probably have the wrong motivation, for your decisions, and maybe that's part of the issue, that we have to go through a different system.
Yeah.
Changing, so you don't even, as a minister, you probably don't even get a chance to get comfortable with anything because suddenly, a year later, you've got a different portfolio. So that's problematic as well. There's no continuity. And we found that certainly here, when we were dealing with the Department of Environment, that they were changing them like dirty underwear,
Yeah.
You're constantly back to square one, right? When you're trying to get an issue, get the attention of a politician to an issue because a new person has come in that knows nothing about it.
And as an example of disappointment in our political leadership, last year, a pre-budget series of public meetings held by our finance minister, Blaine Higgs, took place around New Brunswick. And we attended the one in Fredericton here. And when it was our turn to talk, I spoke to him about a lot of the success stories in jurisdictions that had diversified their economy and were doing more and more clean energy and clean efficiency through legislation and policies that allowed people to invest in their own communities. We were not looking for a government handout. We were looking for some of the same financial incentives that other jurisdictions like Vermont, Oregon, Washington, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, Scandinavian countries, Germany, the list goes on and on. The success stories are there. It's not rocket science. And when we asked the minister why they were not, if they were willing to start implementing some of these, the answer in front of a huge crowd of people, it must have been 300 plus in that meeting, the answer from Finance Minister Blaine Higgs was, that's too complicated. That's too complicated. So completely shutting down all notion that they were actually going to serve as an elected official to solve some of these big issues. If it's too complicated to worry about the overwhelming evidence that we're in a climate crisis, if it's too complicated to look at our Clean Jobs sign, which our Council of Canadians group here in Fredericton are promoting, that shows very clear the evidence there's 7 times more jobs created with clean energy and efficiency than going oil and gas. Oil and gas is very capital intensive, whereas clean energy, all these local economic initiatives are very labor intensive. If the focus is on jobs and prosperity, which I would think the finance minister would be interested in, this is how you do it. You diversify your economy instead of putting all your eggs in one basket and having foreign companies come in and provide all that investment and take all the profit. And that really encapsulates his answer to the citizens of New Brunswick, encapsulates what's wrong, the fact that it's too complicated.
Well, it's, we're just constantly being sold this idea that New Brunswick can't do anything, that we're just this useless province that doesn't have anything to offer, and we just have to be happy, to become the playground of these, extreme energy projects now, and I sort of joke about it, but you've probably heard of the movie The Hunger Games, the book series.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And the different districts, and I keep saying we're District 12, we're one of the sacrifice districts,
zones.
The sacrifice zones of this crazy industry, we're not worth anything, and the problem is that, I think New Brunswick has been told this for a long time because we are a bit of a feudal society, we have a big, huge, the second richest family in Canada that pretty much owns this province and does whatever it wants with our forests. And, so people are, I think, just used to maybe being told, that we're just a bunch of beaten down people, and that we just can't come up with good things on our own. And it's just so pathetic, because a state like Vermont is not that far away from us, and it's really not that different
No, it's the same.
The geography and look at the stuff that they have, and it's so noticeable. I mean, you cross the border into Maine from New Brunswick, and I mean, you think you've entered a different zone, because I mean, the forest is completely different looking because, of course, our forest has been decimated by the Irvings mostly.
Yeah, we did a show on that.
Replanted, with very monoculture type plantations, tree plantations, and it really is a striking difference.
And the politicians here, their big mantra is bring our workers home. All these oil and gas workers in Alberta who, are this is where the jobs are. So, I mean, but their families decide to stay here in New Brunswick because you wouldn't want to live out there in this type of environment. So these are workers that are going back and forth, leaving their families here in New Brunswick to work in the tar sands and elsewhere. So the mantra by our politicians here is bring our workers home. The problem with that, with shale gas and pipeline, is that these are going to be short-term jobs. And the industry comes in, they ruin the land, they ruin the water, they have this industrial footprint which is unimaginable that'll make the land problematic for growing food and growing forestry, tourism, all of those things. And so we're going to start countering that by saying we want to bring our workers home, we want to bring our families back, but we want to do it forever. And these short-term solutions that are being touted by foreign companies that are coming in and extracting resource without environmental oversights and as quickly as possible, we are saying no. Elsipogtog in Kent County here in New Brunswick is the sign of a growing discontent and refusal to give up our land and our water and our air and the health and the climate future of our children for this profit-driven, lying industry. And if they think that Elsipogtog was just a flash in the pan, I've never seen a grassroots movement in New Brunswick take off like this. It cuts across all traditional categories of people who are activists. And one thing we've heard time and time again is I've never protested. We have parents, we have grandparents, we have all the indigenous people, we have young people, all involved wanting to protect their land and their water from shale gas. And it's so affirming for this province to finally find a voice. And we've been beaten down with decades and decades of corporate rule and politicians who are accepting that corporate oversight. And we're just saying enough is enough. They can bring 400, 500 RCMP officers in, and you know what? The parents and the grandparents and the First Nations are still going to be on that road, blocking the testing trucks, and there's talk now about fracking vehicles. Wow. If you want to keep New Brunswick in the world spotlight, try to bring in fracking vehicles into this province, and it's going to be quite the show. As a parent who is desperately concerned about the future, there is no decision to be made other than to stop shale gas. And we are going to do that in New Brunswick. And we are becoming a symbol of resistance for people in England, people in New York, people in Australia. It's amazing how all of these communities are in touch with one another and watching what's going on. We're the future. We want a diversified economy, not based on oil and gas, but on clean jobs and jobs that are going to save the planet at the same time.
Yeah, I think, what happens when you push people just one notch too far, this is what happens. And I think that's what's happened in New Brunswick. Finally, this was the last straw, obviously. And And I mean, it is interesting that here in New Brunswick, the heavy-duty protests have happened at the exploration stage, which is definitely, I think, probably the first time that happened, that a population was so aware of an upcoming industry that they were able to organize themselves and mobilize each other, before the exploration stage even happened. So for the companies that came, this summer and the summer before, it was probably a shock for them because they've been able to, in the past, do their exploration without any resistance, and we have just said, no, we are not letting you come and spend, we don't want you to come here and spend this money on exploration because we don't want you to come back to get whatever you find, so I think that's been quite unique about this.
And they did leave too, though they're saying they're coming back, right?
Yeah, and they left. But what's so interesting is that they came back, and then of course there was this huge, thing that happened that put us on the map in October, and then the government, the company was able to get an injunction against the people, like early December, and they said in court that they needed 7 days more of uninterrupted exploration. Well, after 4 days of heavily interrupted exploration, they packed up and left. But of course, they left us with the line that they had finished exploring. And we all know that that's not true. We know that they didn't complete what they came here to do, but they just had to leave because things were just going out of hand again. And so, we feel, a little bit victorious that way, that they left with their tail between their legs, but of course they won't admit it. And even the media changed the story and made it sound that they completed their exploration and that they're now coming back later. And we all are pretty sure that they're, planning to come back this year to what they want to do is they want to drill 2 wells. That's the next phase of their exploration that they want to do. So they've got something coming because there's just no way that people are going to let that happen without making a big fuss.
Yeah, all the media, including our publicly owned CBC, has been very, it's just been very unacceptable, the coverage, to basically take whatever the company says at face value and run with that story and say that they have completed their testing when their lawyer in court said that they required twice the amount of time to do that. And no one questions it. And so people are quickly becoming disenfranchised of the media, including CBC, and they're realizing that we have to become the media ourselves. And if someone like Neil Young speaks up and all the media, including CBC, pile on and basically spew out this rhetoric about Neil Young referring Hiroshima and Fort McMurray false, trying to say the current tar sands was all going to China, false. He was talking about the pipeline expansion going to China. All these things that the media is misreporting, we've had enough of it. And we are not listening to it anymore. And who cares what they say? We're still going to be out on the road blocking those trucks. And we are going to start mobilizing and engaging the citizens here in New Brunswick with meetings, with accountability and transparency, that we're going to go after the politicians and insist through social media, through public meetings, that they be accountable and they stop lying to us. And I can't be any more frank than that. They've completely disenfranchised themselves of their responsibility to the citizens of this province, including our media. And I think, like Carolyn said, people have been pushed to the limit. And you are seeing a revolution, a social revolution here in the province of New Brunswick. And with the Indigenous people together, we are accepting our shared responsibilities to protect the land and the water and the future of our children. And there's not a force of RCMP officers, of CSIS, of corrupt politicians, of corporate media that are going to stop us. It's for our children. And if the politicians don't get that, they're going to be sorely disappointed when they try to come in and force more standoffs. This is not going to stop until they leave.
You're listening to Awake Radio, straight talk for the awake and aware.
To the Public Safety and Environment Committee, and they were completely indifferent. They passed no resolution to act on that, and I asked them repeatedly that I wanted a presentation to City Council. They would not grant that, so I'm forced to, our group, the Friends of UNB Woodlot, are forced to go to City Council directly, and you saw the reaction tonight. Mayor Woodside is acting indifferent, and he has the ability to show leadership, like Sackville, like other municipalities, and he's not. Why? Why play politics with our water? And it's just unacceptable.
So, Mr. D'Arcy, I was at the meeting, and I didn't hear the committee refuse you an audience at a council meeting. I understood the chairman to say there would be a process and there would probably be further consultation. So I didn't hear any outright refusal at that meeting. So I guess,
right.
Did you apply to the clerk to attend tonight's meeting and ask for time on the agenda?
No, with the convoy of the trucks, I felt that I should go to council directly.
What is the convoy of the trucks that you're referring to?
BJ Services is a hydraulic fracturing technology and services company based out of Alberta, and a convoy of those hydraulic fracturing vehicles. They have liquid nitrogen, they have petroleum and other fracking material. We're seen heading towards Fredericton on Thursday afternoon, and then on Friday morning, the same convoy was seen going down Knowledge Park Drive and then heading towards New Maryland. We don't know the extent of our drinking water sources here for our own aquifer here in Fredericton. And for these companies to be allowed to come in, the press has to be asking, how can fracking vehicles be here in this province, in this area, without a phased-in EIA process that the ministers promised us? Why are they here?
Well, I think the mayor's point is that those are questions probably that you have to take up with the province, and I think his answer to you tonight is that he's not willing to let any exploration take place in the city. So are you discounting him at his word?
Why is he not allowing our presentation, which was, I think, the councillors that saw it found it very informative, but the Public Safety and Environment Committee chose not to do anything with it. And they need more information. I think City Council needs to show leadership on this issue. And that's all we're asking, an opportunity to inform those 12 councillors and the mayor of the issues, public safety and health issues I raised with the Public Safety and Environment Committee.
So why not go to the city's clerk's office and go through that process like anybody else has to?
I have gone through the process, and I found for the Public Safety and Environment Committee meeting, I had to go to council and committee directly and ask for that meeting.
You say the mayor is indifferent. He said, I thought quite clearly, no fracking, no testing, nothing within city limits.
Right.
So how is that indifferent? To me, that's a pretty definite answer.
I made it very clear at the Public Safety and Environment Committee presentation that the Friends of UNB Woodlot gave that well pads can be located directly outside the city limits. And with hydraulic fracturing, horizontal drilling up to 1 kilometer or more, our city limits mean nothing.
So what can the mayor do about that?
He has to be proactive.
He
has to be proactive. He has to work with the other municipalities like Sackville that are going to use the Union of Municipalities in New Brunswick that are going to the province with their own resolutions to ban shale gas or have a moratorium on it. And that's what we're asking City Council here in Fredericton to do.
Because we don't know how long he'll be a mayor for. We need a resolution in place that the next city council with either Brad Woodside or another mayor in place will have to adhere to. So I just don't think the word of a politician is good enough. It needs to be written down, not just...
Okay, so your feeling is you want a resolution on the record of some kind?
I think a question that I have as a concerned citizen is the city prepared to properly clean the contaminated water that is going to come into the city of Fredericton? Are they prepared to pay for that financially? That's a question that you need to ask.
The dynamics, I think people are going to look back at these years happening before us, and they're going to say that why was this groundswell of community activism, mobilization, with First Nations included, why did it happen now? And I really think that deep down there is a growing anxiety amongst parents, grandparents, First Nations, that something is not right with our environment and with our economy in general. We've reached peak oil. We're going into one recession after another that we can't seem to get out of. And these are exactly prescriptive of what all the economists have predicted. And the World Bank has said that if we continue on our economic path and extraction of oil and gas, the severe cost of catastrophic storms and food shortages is going to lead to a worldwide economic collapse by 2030, okay? And then we have reminders, and it keeps amplifying the anxiety of people by having all of these severe rain events. Back in December 2010, here in the province of New Brunswick, it rained 6 inches of rain only an hour's drive away from Fredericton. And you talk to the Emergency Measures Organization people, they have never seen a storm system like that before. It hung over Macadavic Lake and dumped the 160 millimeters of rain plus into that lake system, which fed into the Macadavic River. And that led to the catastrophic $50 million plus damage created by the floods in December 2010. Flash forward to Calgary, Alberta, June of 2013, and they had over 12 inches of rain. This is like 300 millimeters of rain in the Bow River, which caused the catastrophic, unprecedented historical flooding of Calgary. And then Toronto in July 2013, over 120 millimeters of rain in just a few hours, completely overwhelming their stormwater system. And then again in the same month, July 2013, here in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, over 150 millimeters, 6 inches of rain, again, flooding the community. All the economists, all the scientists that are propped up by industry, all the politicians can say that nothing is wrong, that their oil and gas mantra is true. People know that something is wrong. And when they start examining why are these storms happening, and they realize the climate scientists are saying that we're probably looking at 550 parts per million carbon dioxide by 2050, it may go up to over 700 parts per million carbon dioxide by 2100. Forget about the 2% Celsius rise in climate in our lifetime. We're going to be lucky to hold it down to 3 degrees Celsius or even 4 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. 2 degrees is problematic. 3 or 4 degrees, we're going to have difficulty growing our food. We're going to have difficulty living in many of our communities. We're having these severe rain events that last 1 or 2 days. What about a future climate that's going to be 30 continuous days of rain, or a climate where we're going to have 30 continuous days of unprecedented heat? This is what is coming. And I think more and more people are becoming desperately concerned about not only their economic future, but the future of their children and their grandchildren. And the politicians because they've been corrupted, they don't get it. They're completely blown away by these grassroots movements like we're seeing here in New Brunswick. They don't get it. They're so far removed and in the pockets of corporations, greedy corporations, that they never talk about these issues. And we know different.
Mark, what about the rise in cancers out here? That's one thing me and Lisa noticed, because we're from Toronto. When we came out here, we saw, like, everyone we talked to had some cancer issue in their family. What's with that?
Well, cancer is multifactorial. It really depends on your exposure to chemicals, to your diet, to the stress within the individual or the family, and genetics. Okay. But what's happening in general is that we're putting too much stress on our environment, on our society. People are having to live, the quality of life is less than it was 20 years ago. Poor nutrition, more being overworked, stress, anxiety, they're all going to play into increasing cancer rates. I think it's just symptomatic of a society that is not functioning as well as it could. And if they think that shale gas and the tar sands expansion is going to do anything but increase the cancer rates, they're just they're crazy.
Well, that's why, the physicians here have spoken out against shale gas, because they can see it. They know that there'll be, health issues, and I mean, they're the ones that are going to be looking after the patients. So, and the nurses, the physicians have basically said that they don't think it's a good idea for this industry to come here.
They've already called for a moratorium. The general practitioners of New Brunswick and the nurses have all called for shale gas to stop.
Oh, excellent.
And so the politicians, again, are not listening to our own doctors and nurses.
Well, and one thing that I think that we need to keep in mind, too, is that the extractive industries, they're coming home to roost now, but they've been causing all this kind of havoc in other countries for a long time, like the oil industry in Nigeria, you can name, and mining and all those things have basically done this to other countries and other populations for a long, long time. It's just that, we didn't experience it because it wasn't happening at home. And those places have suffered, from this. And so I don't think that our situation that we're faced with now is very unique when you're looking across the globe, because we were just, we've been in Central America a fair bit, because whenever we can escape, we like to go to Costa Rica, and we've talked to some friends there that we've made who are also activists against the mining companies and the Canadian mining companies that are really causing a lot of trouble in Central America and in other places. And this friend of ours said to us, he said, you're just experiencing it now. We've experienced this for decades where we live, this aggressive behavior and really where the people don't benefit, when those industries come in.
No.
So, it's really, I think it's just a thing that comes along with these extractive industries. They're never good, usually not good for the people that live where they come and get the stuff. It's the company that benefits, and the people high up in those companies, and then there are some jobs, but not usually great jobs for the local people, and then those jobs go away. So, it's just coming home to roost now.
And then they take their earnings and they put them in offshore bank accounts.
Yes, exactly.
And it's worked out, pretty well for a lot of these corrupt politicians and aggressive companies for several decades. But I think they're missing the point that something has changed. Where we have people, like I said, that have never protested before, ever in their life. They're on the ground. They're holding signs. In some cases, they're actually blocking fracking testing vehicles. What's happened And I think, again, they realize that governments who they've trusted in the past, they now realize that governments are lying to them, and that the corporate media is subservient and basically just repeating whatever the corporate and political message is, and not giving the facts a clear airing. What we're going to do here, and I mentioned about, we are becoming the media, is that, these bullies in both the political arena and the large corporate players that come into our province and extract unsustainably our resources, they don't want us to talk about the alternatives. They just want us to, because of their bully tactics, they just want to get into these circular gerbil wheel discussions on how bad shale gas or how bad the tar sands is, and they're going to say, well, it's really good. These are our studies. We're going to counter and say, well, no, it's bad because these are our studies. And this non-productive gerbil wheel, which you don't get any solutions coming out of that. We're going to change the channel. We have a provincial election coming up in September. We have 9 months to energize the population. They've already been sensitized on shale gas. When you talk to people, the majority of New Brunswickers get it. They know that shale gas cannot be done safely right now with the present technology. So what we're going to do, we don't want to talk about shale gas as much as we want to talk about solutions. We want to talk about successful jurisdictions. If the politicians say they're doing this because of jobs and prosperity, okay, how do you create jobs and prosperity? You do it not with oil and gas extraction, which are fossil fuels, but you actually do it by increasing building efficiency, by increasing clean energy. And you know what? The tools are legislated laws and policies. It just so happens that New Brunswick, our politicians have deliberately prevented these laws and policies from being implemented in New Brunswick that other jurisdictions have used for the last 10, 20 years successfully to create more jobs and prosperity than New Brunswick could ever hope for. So our channel, our media to the people is that we want feed-in tariffs. We want community economic development investment funds, CDIFs. We want investment tax credits for co-ops. We want loan programs, a long-term payback program so we can retrofit our homes and businesses. And you know what? At the end of the day, we're going to create more jobs, more prosperity. We're going to leverage not government handouts, but our own money. We're going to, instead of investing our RRSPs in Wall Street, we can invest in our own companies, our own co-ops, our own communities here in New Brunswick. That's how you create jobs and prosperity. And at the same time, we might just save the planet.
Oh, exactly.
Because we're going to get off of fossil fuels. We're going to say to the politicians, you know what? You are lying. We have more jobs with these other legislated policies. That's how we're going to, that's our vision for the province of New Brunswick, and that's our vision for all the people that live in this geography called New Brunswick. It's going to be very empowering, I think, when people realize that more and more people are realizing that they're being lied to. But we're going to give them solutions, alternatives. We're going to give them a positive vision for the province. And if the politicians don't want to accept any of that, they're going to do it at their peril at the provincial election this September.
So you have 9 months. I think you sound like you're well on your way, though, to being successful.
Yeah, well, we've got an energized group of people, so we're trying to get our act together and get going. And, we'll see what, do is try our best and see what happens.
Yeah, you're with the Council of Canadians?
Yeah, that's the group that we started up our chapter about a year and a couple of months ago. We were all like a bunch of people, fighting this shale gas issue, and we were all coming from sort of different angles. And then we thought, we really should start a group, and we thought Council of Canadians was really the best group to put ourselves under because, with shale gas, of course, it is about the water, among other things. And so it's been great. We've been a very active chapter. We've had monthly meetings. We took a few months off in the summer. We've had speakers come in, and it's just a really dynamic bunch of people, and it's been great.
Maud Barlow has already traveled to New Brunswick twice, and certainly gone out of her way to also visit the First Nations, Elsie Buktuk, and give her unqualified support for the Indigenous people here. So it's been it really has been a wonderful fit. We're so happy being part of the Council of Canadians, the largest nonpartisan citizens organization in Canada. And people really recognize it. When we have our banner at our information table at the market, Council of Canadians is instantly recognizable. People like it. People like the organization. And I would certainly encourage the listeners who are in Canada to consider, if your community doesn't have a chapter, to really consider forming a chapter. It's been a wonderful fit for us.
Yeah. And they're so supportive. They've been just, they've been there because we have, of course, they've got like the head office in Ottawa, and then there's these regional offices. And Angela Giles is the one of our contacts at the Halifax office, and she's just been amazing. I can't even count how many times she's been to New Brunswick, I think. But it's been very. Pardon me?
Angela Giles, we should get in touch with her here.
Yes, she would be great to have on.
Really, we've been given so much support. It's just been so great for us, because it's made it easier, for us when we do our things. We're getting their help. They have supplied us with some things, like the banner and with buttons and literature. Stuff like that. Like we have a lot of the stuff, literature that we've generated ourselves, but certainly it's a really great support group, for a community group. They really do come to help you, so you really feel part of this large family. And so it's wonderful. And then they had an annual meeting where they invite the representatives of each chapter to come. So we sent one of our founding members to that annual meeting, and it's just. It really is just a very, very good organization, and Maud Barlow is just amazing.
Yes, I've heard very good things about her.
Wow, what an inspiring person.
Yeah, and it's very, very well respected organization.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
And then you see solidarity. That's what we need. We need to get together as a group, like all these little separate groups. I think 2014 we're going to start seeing a lot more of that, groups getting together because we are all fighting the same thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I really think it's, might have been wake-up time, but I think 2014, it's been action time for us, but I'm just talking more maybe Canada-wide. But yeah, I can see 2014 as also being a year, where a lot's going to be happening for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't need groups like the Council of Canadians as an umbrella for grassroots activism, community organization, but it does help. It instantly allows you to access other networks of people. And since we formed, the city of Moncton in New Brunswick has formed a chapter. So we now have chapters in all three major cities. And perhaps the following year we'll get, more chapters. But we are only one piece of the pie. We network with the other community groups, with the grassroots. We network with the Indigenous people here in the province, and it feels more like this is a citizen movement.
Yeah, very flat movement. You don't have and nobody is really the boss.
Yes.
Everybody's on the same level, and we all talk to each other, and
to the RCMP and CSIS and Department of Public Safety here in the province who are listening, to our social media, to our phone calls, watching our email, forget it. You are not going to infiltrate and control this unprecedented grassroots movement. There are simply too many people, and there's no umbrella organization. There's not a small level of leaders. This is completely parallel community groups, grassroots, moving ahead in the same direction. There is no way that this type of coercion and heavy-handed police tactics are going to stop this movement in New Brunswick. Forget it. It's a waste of money. And it's an invasion of our civil liberties. It's an invasion of our constitutional rights. The RCMP had better think twice about the future, because they have lost tremendous respect for their police force here in New Brunswick. And when people walk by a police officer for the RCMP, they start getting nervous with what transpired against the Indigenous people and the Anglophones and the Francophones in Kent County, in Rexton area, and in Elsipogtog, was an unprecedented, unmitigated disaster for the police force. And they broke a lot of relationships that they tried to build with the Indigenous people. It's going to take a long time for those wounds to heal. And if they think that they're going to protect the Texas-based and other foreign companies coming in and starting to shale gas frack our land and our water, they're going to be very, very surprised. I mean, this is the future of our land and our children. And people have had enough. And just stop it. RCMP, when you're listening to this, just stop it and start supporting the people and start listening to what we're saying. We're about jobs and prosperity, and we're about the preservation of our children. And you are parents, and for God's sake, if you can't protect the future of your child, what the hell are you doing? And you're going to arrest grandmothers, mothers, fathers, Indigenous people who are protectors of the land? Are you serious? You're going to actually put them in jail? And we know what happened. That didn't work out so well for the civil rights movement in '63. They tried that, and the prisons became overflowing. And there was so much political pressure that we know that the civil rights movement was ultimately successful. You cannot stop a grassroots movement like this. People get it. People know that we have to change and get off fossil fuels. People know that shale gas cannot be done safely. People know that the export pipeline is a surefire way to lead to catastrophic climate disaster for our children. People get it. And all the RCMP, all the CSIS, all Department of Public Safety officials are not going to stop this movement. And I'm hoping that by talking like this, I can empower more and more Canadians to speak up and be like Neil Young and have the courage to speak up for your children, for your community, for your jobs and your prosperity. And on so many different levels, you can find one of those levels that resonates with you. Get out there and have your voice. Don't care what the media says. You are the media.
Mark, you cannot stop an idea whose time has come.
That's right. Well, and the thing is, the reality is that the existing paradigm, economic paradigm that, our government seem to just want to stare themselves blindly to, or whatever you want to call it, that is gone. We need to come up with something different. We need a sustainable economy, and I mean, it's a worldwide issue, but, and if they've got to accept it, and get on with it already.
And look at Germany. I mean, Germany is almost landlocked, They have fewer resources than we do, and yet they have a supercharged economy. I mean, they integrated East Germany, for goodness sake, and without as much of a hiccup. And this is a supercharged economy. Feed-in tariffs, the ability of citizens and farmers to own over half of the solar and wind installations in that state. $100 billion of private investment from citizens and farmers. $100 billion. Just think about it. They have fewer resources. They don't have tar sands. They're not shale gas fracking. And yet their economy, their quality of life is certainly something we can be envious of. And enough of the lies. And, we'll be like a broken record. We'll ask our politicians, well, what about feed-in tariffs? What about community economic development investment funds? What about investment tax credits for co-ops? And what about, 10, 15-year payback loans for our homes and buildings to be retrofitted? And with clean energy, solar panels, wind turbines, et cetera. Why can't we have that other jurisdictions have proven successful? And are we going to tolerate our finance minister's answer, say it's too complicated? I'd say the answer to that is move out of the way. Move out of the way. We are here. We are going to take back our democracy, take back our climate future, take back our jobs and prosperity, and it doesn't matter anymore who gets elected. I think we're past that. We realize that we need grassroots revolution, activism to make change in the world. We're at the forefront. I mean, it's exhausting, but it's also very invigorating. We missed the 60s. Caroline and I, we weren't old enough then to be part of that revolution that stopped the Vietnam War. But that was certainly unprecedented. I think we're quickly going into an unprecedented worldwide revolution where people have to get off fossil fuels and have to embrace local economic initiatives, which will save the planet, but it will also create jobs, prosperity, food security, and protect our homes and businesses from future climate storms.
The government has no business to be in business. The government is not there to be the
caretaker.
The caretakers of everything. Like how it has gotten so far.
Well, and they're lying. They don't want public meetings. They don't want to talk about all the. If they want to ignore the World Bank, International Energy Agency, and powerhouse businesses like PricewaterhouseCoopers, if they want to ignore their advice on keeping most of the fossil fuels in the ground, people are going to quickly realize that they're lying to us. And if the media simply repeats their mantra, we're going to shut down and stop listening to the media. And Neil Young is, we'll keep coming back to that. Neil Young is the gift that keeps giving. And I think it was a huge political mistake for Stephen Harper, for the Premier of Saskatchewan and Alberta, and the industry led by Ethical Oil and Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers to go after and target Neil Young. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. They should have just left him alone. And what they've done, they've tried to make an example out of him, and they're only making people like us invigorated and saying, you know what, you're lying. You're lying. You're taking things Neil Young said out of context, and if that's as good as you can give, then it shows that you don't want to talk about the facts. You don't want to talk about science. You don't want to talk about economics. You just want to talk about your greedy agenda that these tar sand and shale gas companies have. And at the end of the day, more and more people are saying, hey, we're on to you, and we know that you're just lying.
This power grab by the corporations, of course, has been happening over the past few decades, but it's just so out of control now that it's just becoming ridiculous. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it is all, I mean, it's really sad, but you do laugh you do have to laugh at it because you think, oh my goodness, like it is just gotten so ridiculous. And, and then to hear people like Rex Murphy, oh my God, the way he's spewing off now, that is just horrible.
And one thing that I think is quite a groundbreaking incident is Lac Megantic. We have at least 47 deaths, and it turns out that there was a systematic systematic and repeated mislabeling of those hazardous goods in the cars, in the rail cars. And so it's alleged that there was, criminal negligence involved in why that Balkan shale oil was being transported in cars that were ill-equipped and crews that were understaffed for that hazardous waste. So we had companies knowing exactly what they were doing. They were transporting at the lowest cost possible. They had gutted the environmental regulations in full support with the federal government. They were transporting this highly volatile shale oil in these rail cars that were unsafe. And it was through alleged criminal negligence. That's a huge, huge, huge story. And you know what? Where is the media? Where is the media? Where are our politicians trying to prevent another Lac Megantic? So fast forward to Plaster Rock here in New Brunswick. Just outside their town, we had another explosion. And lo and behold, we had more Bakken shale oil involved in that explosion. And for God's sake, what's more important? The corporate profits or the safety of our New Brunswickers and Canadians? And the government, the federal government, has not stepped in to fix those problems. How many more Lac Megantics is it going to take? It should only take one Lac Megantic. And it's been more than, 6 months since that accident, and there's still been no legislative change. This is criminal. This is criminal. And I think the more that we see the abuse of people like Neil Young, the more we see Lac Megantics going unanswered, the more we see our media not asking these questions, people are going to get more mobilized, more grassroots activism, and they're going to take charge themselves. So I see the climate change, accidents like Lac Megantic, the absurdity of shale gas coming into our communities. I think all of this has layered itself one on top of the other, and finally, like Carolyn was saying, people have had enough. It's just crazy. And people are going to talk about this 20, 30 years from now, and they're going to say, you know what? These people were driven into the corner, and they saw that the one thing after another had to be stopped. It's crazy. We live in a crazy world right now. And the only people that are going to stop it are the parents, the grandparents, the young people, together with the Indigenous people. And thank goodness we have empowered Indigenous people across Canada. We are entrusted to them to lead us the way to a more sustainable future. And they didn't give over their land. We have to work together with our Indigenous population here in Canada, and more of us through people like Neil Young, are realizing our shared responsibility to the land and the air. And they're a nation, just like Canada is a nation. We have nation-to-nation agreements, treaties, and more of all of these issues are now incorporating the fact that we have shared responsibilities with the people we share Canada with, our Indigenous people. And that relationship building is very much started here in New Brunswick. And I think it's very cathartic. It has a healing effect for both of our nations. And, the politicians and the RCMP and maybe in the future the Army think that they can come in and stop that. But the idea is out of the bag. We have to work closer together to make sure that we protect our land and our air and our children's climate future.
And the Indigenous people have so much knowledge about this.
It's part of their culture. It's wonderful. I think that there's a wisdom to the Indigenous people, their cultures, that more and more of us have lost. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to their very deliberate, purposeful protections of the land, of the air, of the 7 generations ahead of us, it's a very long-term focused, very environment, land-centric. And I think we've lost a lot of that. And we have so much to learn and relearn from the Indigenous cultures. And that's starting to happen now. And it's so empowering. It really is. It's things that we want to teach our children about. And it used to be all part of the environmental movement. I think the First Nations and Indigenous people across Canada generally are going to save our nation. I really believe that we have so much to learn from them, and they are going to be a model for the future sustainability of our local food, local forests, local fisheries, local energies. And we're going to be so, I think there's going to be so much gratitude to the fact that we have this diversity of nations, of cultures here in Canada. And all the Stephen Harpers, all the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, all the U.S.-based, foreign-based oil and gas companies are not going to stop these ideas of shared responsibilities for the future and our land and our water. And I'm repeating myself, but I think that these are very important themes that are resonating throughout New Brunswick. And the voices are going to resonate even louder in the coming months as we get closer and closer to the election. And God help us if the companies and the politicians are stupid enough to bring fracking companies back into New Brunswick this year. It's going to be insane.
The world is watching too, eh? I mean, did you read the Guardian article? I was probably about a year ago. And they said what you just said, pretty well word for word, is that the Indigenous people here are going to save our planet.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they haven't figured, they know that you can't kill your host, and unlike us, we don't seem to clue in that this very planet is the thing that we need to stay alive. It's just pathetic, that the amount of disrespect that's happening, and again, it's at the hand of these giant corporations, and they have so much power and so many rights, and the laws are written in their favor, and it's got to end. It has to stop.
I know, and when you see RCMP and you people that are supposed to protect the people, protecting the corporations, it's shameful. It's shameful.
We have Al Jazeera doing full documentary news reports, investigative reports on Elsie Bucktook.
Yeah, I watched that.
We have APTN that is covering this. We have The Guardian has had stories. We actually had a New York University master's student in documentary filmmaking, Michael Shade, who was up during the summer, and he came back, and he was fortunate enough to cover the October 17th unmitigated disaster that the RCMP perpetrated on the citizens of New Brunswick and the Indigenous people. He's releasing his documentary in New York City in the second week in February, and his title for the documentary, I have to say, is aptly called Nowhere Else to Go. And this is another thing that politicians and the RCMP do not appreciate. There are people like Caroline and I that if shale gas was to come into our community, we'll probably move. It's not worth it. The malignant breast cancer rates, the asthma rates, cancer and disease in general, it's not worth it to live in these shale gas areas. We're out of here. But the Indigenous people have their traditional lands that they have lived on for centuries, and if not longer, millennium. And for the notion that these people are simply going to move, they have nowhere else to go. This is their land. And the police forget this. Our politicians, our industry, corrupt industry leaders forget this. And they better watch this film when it comes out, and that idea they better listen to carefully. The Indigenous people have nowhere else to go. They're pushing them to the limits, and they're pushing back. They now have their allies here in New Brunswick, here in Canada, and we have people like Neil Young who are more than ready to lead the charge with attracting more and more media attention. And I'm so proud of everyone, including the Indigenous people, who have stood up for the land. They have nowhere else to go, and boys, oh boys, they have made it very clear that shale gas is not going to happen on their land.
What do you want to see in the next 5 years?
Well, what I would like to see is a change, like I said before, in our economic paradigm, where we need to stop being so, growth-oriented, because I really think that is just unsustainable. We have to understand that progress does not equal growth. You can be a prosperous place without constantly expecting to grow. And I think that is part of the problem. It's this crazy stock market thing where companies have to show increased returns all the time. So to me, that is a huge thing, and that's a pretty ambitious thing to be wishing for, but that's what I think we need to be working towards, definitely degrowth and, a green economy, sustainable, more local-based. Globalization turned out not to be such a good idea, and we probably need to try to kind of undo that, and have places, again, growing food for themselves, not to export to somewhere else. And a local-based economy that is sustainable, that looks into, efficiency to cut back on energy costs, and then switching to green energy is what I think, we need to be looking to.
5 years, future outlook, wow. If we don't start addressing climate change and keep the majority of fossil fuels in the ground, we're probably going to be looking at a more irregular expansion of the polar vortex, the same vortex that caused the big chill the last couple of months, the same vortex that pushed Hurricane Sandy storm system all the way up the seaboard to hit New York City when it came on land. If we get 5 years from now, if we don't do anything, we're probably going to get into an ice-free summer up in the Arctic. At that point, climate change scientists are deathly afraid that all the climate models have to be thrown out, that we're going to get into very, very dangerous, very potentially quick positive feedback systems that could spin out of control. And I think the World Bank saying we're headed for worldwide economic collapse by 2030. Thomas Homer Dixon, who has researched a lot of this, and he's done speaking tours. He was here in Fredericton. He said he would give it 5 to 10 years. He was here last year. He would give it 5 to 10 years in which time that catastrophic climate change or food shortages in the United States will force us to change our ways. I think it's going to be less than that. I'm an optimist. I think for our children, we are going to see in the next 5 years a worldwide grassroots movement to do like Germany, Scandinavia, individual states like Vermont, Oregon, and Washington, and go to a more local-based economy that create more jobs, more prosperity, and do it without damaging the environment. I think more light bulbs are going to come on in the heads of grandparents and parents, Indigenous people throughout North America and the world, and we're going to take over and be the media and make change in the world. That's what I see happening in the next 5 years, because the climate change storms are going to get worse and worse and worse in that time frame. And it's going to remind us again and again and again that the politicians are lying to us about climate change. They're lying to us about the jobs and prosperity that oil and gas create. And so that's my forecast for the 5 years. And if we don't see that, I think the future of our children is really in jeopardy.
Can you see humanity allowing that?
Can you see any parent standing by and seeing their children put at risk? I can't see it. No. I think more and more of us realize what's at stake. And for the sake of our children, the lies must stop. We must elect politicians that agree to follow proven economic initiatives, diversification campaigns, and it's not that simple. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. There's only a handful of laws and policies you need to put in place to allow communities and citizens to invest in their own economy. And I'll repeat it again, so more and more of us can talk to their politicians and ask for feed-in tariffs, for investment tax credits for co-ops, for community economic development investment funds, and for long-term payback loans. This is how you supercharge jobs and prosperity, and also maybe even save our children's future.
It's not that complicated.
Not that complicated.
Well, that's the other thing I was thinking. You know, you've probably heard of the book called The Trouble with Billionaires, and that's another issue, right? That you've got these super rich people that have all this money that's not entering our economy. You know, they're using it as play money out on the stock market. So, you know, we're like a whole pile of money has just disappeared out of circulation, and that's another thing. You know, that it's just ridiculous that we've gotten into this situation where you can get these super, super, super rich people. I mean, who needs that much money, you know? And I'm not a communist, but I just don't think that it's necessary to create an economy and a system where that's possible. You know, there's got to be a way to have things differently than that. You know, that money stays in circulation rather than in some cloud that some person owns that they can just use. You know, they're not going to invest it into. They don't invest it in the economy, and that's part of the problem.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Caroline, for being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for for calling us.
Of course, we were waiting for this.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Lisa and Al. I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity to reach out and give people hope, to really reach out to the people in your community. Yes. And to Indigenous people, and work together to build a better community, a better economy, and a better future. and it has to get out there more and more.
Community is where it starts, Mark.
That's right.
And solidarity.
Yep, that's right.
So this is the beginning of a relationship now.
Yes, it is.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be a great future.
She's a rainbow and she loves the peaceful life. Knows I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight. There's a part of me in the chaos that's quiet, and there's a part of you that wants me to riot. Everybody needs to cry or needs to spit. Every sweet truth needs just a little hit. Every beauty needs to go out with an idiot. How can you stand next to the truth and not see it? Oh, change your heart, come soon. It's not a hill, it's a mountain. As you start out the climb, do you believe me? Are you doubting? We're gonna make it all the way to the light. But I know I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight. Every generation gets a chance to change the world. Pity the nation that won't listen to you boys and girls. 'Cause the sweetest melody is the one we haven't heard. Is it true that perfect love drives out all fear? The right to be ridiculous is something I hold dear. Oh, but change of heart comes soon. It's not a hill, it's a mountain. As you start out the climb, listen for me, I'll be shouting. Oh, you're gonna make it all the way to the light. But I know I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight. Baby, 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 I know I'm not alone. Baby, 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 I know I'm not alone. Ha, ha, ha. It's not a hill, it's a mountain. As you start out the climb, listen for me, I'll be shouting. We're shouting to the darkness, squeeze out sparks of light. You know we're gonna go crazy. You know we'll go crazy. You know we'll go crazy if we don't go crazy tonight. Oh, slowly only so.
You see what sending out them negative waves did, Moriarty?
But Oddball, I did try and tell them, but they won't listen. I tried.
Sure.
But I did try.
Oh, man. Don't hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
But I can't force them to listen. I can't.
Always with the negative waves, Moriarty. Always with the negative waves.
Have a little faith, baby. Have a little faith.
But I keep trying. Oddball, I keep trying. But they won't listen. They won't tune in. They really won't.
Why don't you knock it off with them negative waves?
Why don't you dig how beautiful it is out here? Why don't you say something righteous and hopeful for a change?
Tune in to Awake Radio for your positive waves.